Hello again. First of all, a big thank you to my subscribers. There are 525 of you. And a huge welcome to new subscribers. The Practical Animal channel is dedicated to the public understanding of the animal industry. Join me on a round-the-world survey of careers with wildlife. The channel aims to give students and career breakers tips that may just give you the edge you need to land that dream animal job. To meet today's guest, we go to Ireland. Shaun Burns is Education Officer at Kildare Wildlife Rescue in Ireland. He talks to me today about triage, husbandry and release of Irish wildlife, with an emphasis on otters. There are an estimated 12,000 otters in the wild in Ireland. They can give birth all year round. For students of English as a foreign language, this video will be interesting because you will hear two distinct accents, my British one and Shaun's Irish accent. Working with otters and living the wild life looks like this.
John, have you ever been bitten by an otter?
uh, I have. Thankfully enough, I was wearing the appropriate PPE at the time, though. So when otters are young, a good way to know that we've done our job well with them, if they're getting nice and wild and nice and feisty, is when you're picking them up and they decide to go for you for the first time. It's a lovely occasion. And thankfully, on that occasion, I was wearing the gauntlets that are thick like welder gloves, and it still hurts.
The PPE is just gauntlets, or do you need other stuff for dealing with otters?
Well, otters in particular, for baby ones, like ones like as I said, that are starting to get a bit bitey or starting to get a bit more active, you wear the gauntlets and you just keep them at like an arm's length. You never hold them close to your body. You keep them at the arm's length. You might use a catch pole as well when they get a bit bigger. So your catch pole is a ring of rope on a pole, and you pull it tight and you get that around like their leg and their neck. And again, that's just to keep as much distance between you and the otter as possible. For just general day-to-day then with your otters, once we put them into like a larger enclosure, you have what's called a pig board. And this is a solid wooden board with a few handles on it. And you get one of your friends, one of your colleagues to go in, hold the board up against the otters. So you might back them into their enclosure, into their holt, and securely lock them into it then. Or if they're out and about, you might just hold it in front of them while your colleague goes behind you then, changes the water, changes the food, changes their baths, all these different bits, cleans up their poo. So pretty much trying to keep as much distance between us and them as possible at that age, because they don't want to be around us. We don't want to be bitten by them.
Sure. Shaun, what's your best otter fact, please?
But the interesting thing about otter excrement has actually been described as smelling pretty nice, but apparently it's been described as sweet, it's been described as like nutty, as fragrant, all these different terms. If you were out and about and wanted to decipher some otter excrement and see if otters were in the area, you could give it a little sniff and see if it's pleasant. You might know there's otters around.
What species does the sanctuary look after?
So at Kildare Wildlife Rescue, at our rehabilitation centre, we look after pretty much any species, mammal or birds that you find native in Ireland. So any native Irish wildlife. So we have everything from buzzards to blue tits. We've got badgers and bats.
Shaun, what jobs are there at animal rescues?
So at animal rescues in Ireland in particular, there isn't a large amount of paid work, unfortunately. No one really at our centre gets paid. Our animal manager gets a small subsidy just to keep him ticking over, but he still has a full-time job as well as working in the centre full-time. So jobs at the centre then are all voluntary, but they do range everything from admin work to social media, rescuing as well, which is a lot of grappling and grabbing animals, but transporting work as well. So bringing animals from A to B or resources from A to B is really important. During our busy time, we have our centre staff, which who might be trained in to look after animals, but they're trained up to prepare food, to do our sorting out, to do a bit of our admin work as well. Our centre staff then will be trained to feed animals and know exactly what certain species get to eat. They know exactly how to handle certain animals as well. So they'll know how to grab a bird the correct way and then know how to handle or work with a fox the correct way, for example. And then the other jobs of the centre would be like your management jobs, then running the day-to-day activities of the centre, and then our veterinary staff as well. We're very lucky to be situated beside a veterinary hospital, and the vets that are particularly interested in wildlife come in and help us with meds, with assessments. They bring certain animals into practice as well. So they're just, it's a wide range of jobs and skill sets that we need at the centre. And I should have mentioned my area as well, the education team. So the guys that go out to schools or bring in schools or other community groups or talk at different events about the work that we do and about the importance of biodiversity.
I'm guessing, Shaun, that every animal that comes in has to go through some process of triage to assess it and see what its needs are.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, our animal care staff, these guys would be trained in on how to assess the animals, the basic assessments. So with these assessments, you basically look at the animal, you decide if it's fit and healthy and it's here because, for example, it's an orphan, or if it was picked up by accident, or maybe it was grounded for a while. Like sometimes we get migratory birds that are just tired from a long migration and we know they just need to be looked after for a couple of nights and then they can be released again. So our volunteers will have a wide range of knowledge in these particular areas, and they'll also know if an animal needs to go to a vet for particular attention if it's out of their range of expertise. So if an animal has any clear and obvious open fractures, dropped wings, for example, poor body condition, then they need to be assessed by a vet, and then they need to be put on a course of medications, from your painkillers to your antibiotics and such, and even more so maybe need to go for an x-ray or put on a drip. So yeah, the triage is a really important step. Every single animal that comes into the centre goes through this. All their details are put on our computer system, and all of that is put over to National Parks and Wildlife Services as well. So all of our animals are put on a system and put on a database.
Can you describe the process for otters, please, Shaun, from triage to release?
Yes, of course. So this time of year in particular, we do have a few otters in our care. I think we have 4 or 5 baby otters. So when I say baby, I mean anything from 2 to 4 or 5 months. Otters are a bit of an anomaly amongst Irish mammals because they can give birth at any time of the year. They don't have a particular breeding season, but they do prefer to give birth in spring or summer. For your young otters, your otter pups that come into care, we usually get them in around the time they start leaving the holts. So around 2 months of age. They'd still be weaned by their mother at this age, however. So, for example, if we were to find a baby otter, which we did actually around January or the start of February, we found a young otter. He was cold, he was alone. He'd literally only left the holt. We estimated he was about 2 months old. So he needed to be grabbed and put in an incubator and kept really, really warm just to get his body condition back. He was given puppy milk through a bottle. I think he only needed that for a week or so, and then slowly introduced to chopped up fish. So that would be anything from like your trout or your herring, anything that's affordable. He'd be slowly introduced to water over the course of a few weeks. So again, varying depths of water. So you'd give him a little dish just to dip his toes in, literally, and then you'd get a little bit bigger so he can start to like have a little paddle, and then larger again so he can swim. All the while providing him an area that's really warm. So say, for example, a heat lamp with a heat pad so he can dry off really quickly and keep his good body condition. You'd start to be a lot more hands-off at this stage as well. You don't need to bottle feed them anymore. Even smaller fish that are whole as well, so they can get familiar with what a fish actually looks like, because it'd be good for in the wild. They actually know what they're looking for. You know, they're not going to be hand-fed chopped up fish or given chicks. They're going to have to go and hunt fish themselves. So as they get bigger, as they get a bit more adventurous, you'd move them into larger enclosures. So you might start off with, say, a rabbit hutch-sized enclosure, move up a little bit bigger. That's when they start coming back to the center. So for the initial month or so, they might be in foster care. They'd come to the center then and get moved into one of our stables. Again, giving them a nice warm area where they can be keep up their condition, keep themselves warm and dry whilst giving them their bath. You might introduce them to some mollusks, some other sea creatures, because they go over to marine habitats as well to feed. You might give them some crustaceans and different bits and pieces, different enrichments. When they get to about 7 or 8 months of age, we'd look for a soft release enclosure for them. So this soft release enclosure, it's basically getting them used to the wild while still keeping them in their enclosed area so we can keep an eye on them. Again, really restricted access to the otters. We might give them food once every 2 days, just a fresh top up, make sure their bath is clean up any poo that's around the place. We'd introduce them to artificial holts so that they know exactly what type of enclosure, or I should say habitat, and what type of basically a safe space for them to look for in the wild. So they'd make holts out of like underneath tree roots, or other old like badger warrens or rabbit dens and all this different stuff. So they get used to what type of environment they need to live in. They'd also get interactions from other wild animals. You might have it so that birds can fly in, or mice and rats can come in as well. It's really important that otters stay in our care until about 12 months of age, because that's kind of the time span that they spend with their parents out in the wild. Their mother would look after them until about 10 or 12 months. So it's a really long process with otters. When you're getting them in, they might be about 2 months old, and you're not releasing them to the wild for another 10 months. It can actually cost about €2,000 to €3,000 each for an otter pup to be in foster care, to rehabilitation, to soft release. So it's a lengthy process. It has to be very gradual, whilst always keeping the animal comfortable, giving them new enrichments, giving them bigger spaces, and making sure they're properly prepared to go to the wild then.
Is it difficult to get their nutrition right, or to get them feeding when they first come in, or do we know everything there is to know about otter nutrition in rehabilitation?
There's always loads more to know. So even this year, it was the first time that I'd seen fish be injected with like a multivitamin, which I thought was very interesting. Again, because if they're being weaned by their mother, they will be getting all these different things that you just can't replicate. You know, puppy milk and your Royal Canin milk and all these different things, they're really good for rearing baby animals, but nothing replicates the mother's milk. So we try our best with these things and introduce them to fish, and giving them different types of fish as well, and then their multivitamins and stuff. So these are different things that we're always trying, always getting new veterinary advice, keeping up with the latest literature, and even looking into otters in zoos or different facilities like this, because they do round the clock care of otters. These animals are being kept until older age, so we get to know exactly how long these animals are living, how healthy they were until different points in their life. So we're constantly looking into these different things. Our veterinary staff are amazing at that. They're always reading new literature on animals. So it's ever evolving, especially because there is not a lot of facilities like ourselves in Ireland. We're kind of the biggest one at the moment. One of the only ones that be taking in large predatory mammals like otters, especially. It'd be very difficult for someone to keep an otter in their house, up until like 12 months of age. It'd be so costly and take up so much space and so much time. So yeah, there's lots more to learn. I think we have the otters that we release into the wild are in amazing condition and seem to be pretty wild as well. They don't want anything to do with us anymore, and they seem to have pretty good instincts. But again, can always be better and can always improve.
Are otters particularly rare in Ireland? And separate question really, what's the population doing? Are they stable, increasing, decreasing?
They've been steadily decreasing though since say the 70s or 80s, and this is because of urbanization, intensive agriculture. So their habitats are dwindling a little bit. So otters really do depend on really clean, really good quality waterways, everything from your streams to your rivers to your estuaries. So the more intensive agriculture, the more pesticides and fertilizers that are being used going into your waterways, it is decreasing the amount of foods that otters can have. So it's leading to your algae blooms or eutrophication of your waterways. It's dwindling fish numbers, therefore it's going to dwindle otter numbers. They're vigorous, they're mustelids, they're really tough, they're really resilient. They will adapt to new environments. They'll adapt to stressors. They'll move away from their traditional environments and move into new ones as well. Wherever there's food, wherever there's water that's producing fish or different prey for them, they'll move into.
Shaun, you used this word mustelid. What does that mean?
So a mustelid is a weasel, basically. So in Ireland, they are our main predatory animal group. So that includes your otters, your badgers, your pine martens, and your stoats. You would get pet mustelids like your ferrets, and then one of our biggest invasive species in Ireland is your mink, which is a North American mustelid. So we use the term mustelid to categorize these animals. They're basically any animal that's related to weasels.
Shaun, what skills and personal powers does a person need to work in otter rehabilitation?
So for anyone looking to work in rehabilitation or rescue of wildlife, it takes a large amount of passion. You need to really love it because it's draining. It's a very physical job. It's very time consuming, whether you're doing the actual on your feet groundwork or whether you're doing admin work or education. And it can be a bit thankless sometimes, not just from the animals. That's obvious and that's apparent. You know that coming into it. The animals don't want to be here. They don't want to be around us. They're not going to say thank you. They're going to fly away or run away when it's their time to get released. So you do need to have that passion to keep you going. You need to be excited about coming in, seeing the young animals and seeing the benefit of your work, helping them come from something that wouldn't be able to look after itself to being able to go to the wild and look after itself properly the way it should. Along with that, obviously, comes the resilience as well. You need to be quite a resilient person. You obviously make connections with animals here, especially if you are putting in the time and effort to look after them. But it's very give or take. The animal could just pass away.
Shaun, what should interns and potential volunteers wear for an interview?
Dress for a normal day and just worry about putting your best foot forward and really showing who you are, using your interests and your passions and like letting that come across in the interview because you are talking to like-minded people. You're talking to people that will have similar interests. They're going to be really excited to learn about you and about what you want to know about the center. So just go in and try to represent yourself as best as you can.
Shaun, what are good questions that people going through the interview process, volunteers and interns, can ask at interview?
Really think about what you want to achieve out of the internship. It doesn't matter how long you're going to be here for, whether it's a couple of weeks or a couple of months. If you have something in mind that you want to achieve, it's really important that you voice that. It's just putting forward all of your interests because with an internship, especially an unpaid one, it's a fantastic thing you're doing, especially for a charity. You're doing amazing work just showing up. But you do have to be that tiny bit selfish as well and make sure you're getting the most out of it as you can and make sure you're leaving that internship with a lot of good memories, that feeling of rewardedness of knowing that you've done a really good thing by coming into work, but also leaving it knowing that you've learned as much as you physically could in that short amount of time that you were there.
Shaun, where do our knowledge gaps lie in otter rehabilitation?
So in otter rehabilitation in particular, one particular knowledge gap that I'd like to know more about is how our guys do once they get released into the wild, whether that be radio collars like they do with certain species, whether that be different methods as well. There's so much different technology nowadays that can go with this. The only issue with this, of course, is if otters aren't red listed, aren't orange listed, they mightn't see it as a priority to do this type of research. But I think it'll be really, really interesting just to see how successful our animals are after they go through the rehabilitation process, whether they're less, more, or just as successful as otters that are allowed to do their thing in the wild from the day they're born.
And that's because they are one of the reasons that it's so important to know about their survivorship is because they're an indicator species. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So it'd be fascinating just to find out. Say, for example, we release an otter into the wild and we put it back into an area that it was found in, and we were able to track the otter's progress, and we discovered that through this tracking, it hasn't moved from that area. Maybe it didn't need to, and that area was really, really beneficial. Had a lot of fish. We knew that otter remained in that territory, held that territory then, and did not see the need to travel further afield. Because if that otter is moving loads, then it's obviously looking for a new area. Then we know that river system, for example, is not of great health. There was not a lot of prey items there. So using these indicator species, as you said, using their behavior, using their movement is a really, really good indicator of the health of our habitats then. And then you could put that information forward and maybe put a limit on the amount of herbicides and different fertilizers that are being used in that area, maybe from agriculture or different influences that are coming from anthropomorphic means.
Shaun, can you suggest a research topic for an undergraduate student on otter rehabilitation or care, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So a really interesting one, we had one of our veterinary students come in, he was from Spain. And the bizarre thing about him, he was a lovely, lovely guy, but he actually preferred the climate in Ireland than he did in Spain, which I just found bizarre. He was looking at parasites of particular animals' feces. So he was looking at foxes, I believe, foxes and hedgehogs. So something like that is always a really, really cool project to do because we have absolutely no shortage of animal feces in our care. So you will have a large data set to pull from. It's a really interesting way to know exactly what particular parasites or what particular bacteria, whatever you want to study, is in the habitats of that animal if it was just pulled from the wild compared to an animal that, say, grew up in foster care. So you can compare the two data sets then and see what results you get. Another interesting thing to do if you wanted to follow otters out in the wild, for example, you could look at a territory where you think otters will exist. You can look for signs of otters, such as their spraints, such as their holts, slides, couches, all these different features of an otter habitat that they use and are distinctive of where an otter would be. And you can compare that to, say, like the territory size and the quality of the river. You can look up this stuff online. EPA water is a great resource for this. And you can compare the amount of otters in particular habitats by the amount of different sightings of otters or the different trails that they leave behind. So you can really use your imagination. Obviously pull from previous studies and get some inspiration from those and build upon them or repeat them again if you think there's more to do from there. There really is, the sky's the limit, especially in Ireland. It'd be great to have a bit more research done about our Irish species and maybe discover a thing or two that we can use then going forward in our rehabilitation, or we can petition for then to say that these guys need that bit more care, that bit more funding.
For the youngster out there who wants to make a career out of wildlife care, Shaun, is there any final advice you can offer?
Yeah, just get as much experience as possible. Having a career in wildlife care in particular is very difficult. Follow a career, for example, in veterinary care, that you can get a lot of hands-on experience, practical experience that's very easily transferable if you did want to work in wildlife. Travel a lot as well. Go to different countries that do pay people to look after animals or even just to work with different species as well. Ireland has some amazing wildlife species, and thankfully none of them are big and scary enough that they're going to kill you. Like, you can handle pretty much every species of animal in Ireland. Like, we are very lucky in that respect. So you will get a lot of hands-on experience here. But just diversify your skill set as much as possible. Study, learn about different wildlife species around the world, around Europe, and then hopefully in a few years' time, if you're starting your college journey within the next year or so, maybe by the time you finish, you get your degree, you do that bit of travel, and there will be some paid work in wildlife care in Ireland at that stage.
Shaun, you're the education officer at Kildare Wildlife Rescue. Thank you very much for being on the Practical Animal channel. Shaun Byrne.
Thank you so much.